Well, hello, I'm Doug Apple, back with another special interview for you today. You might have noticed that it's an election year, and we're actually in the heat of it, and I don't know, maybe half of you or more have already voted. So you have cast your vote, you have done your duty. Some of you are waiting, some of you are election day people. I've run into a few people who are, I'm election day only. So that's great. And the olden days, we used to talk about like an election eve surprise or an election morning surprise. You can't have that anymore because so many ballots have already been cast before election day. But we have Mike Sharman. He is the legal counsel for Share Healthcare, and he is up in the Washington, D.C. area. He's got his pulse on things political as well as things Christian, a man of God, a man of the Word of God, and also, obviously, as we've talked before, very involved in healthcare sharing. But what we really want to do, Mike, since this is the days leading up to an election day when people are hearing this recorded message, so this is your chance to talk about what should the considerations be as people go to cast their ballot. What kind of things are running through your mind these days?
Well, life is definitely one of them. You know, which one of the candidates is more likely to promote life than the other? And of course, we're talking about the presidential elections, but then what about your congressional races that you have? What about the senatorial ones? For the folks that have local elections, what about that? Because the grassroots really pushes everything. So plus the person who's on your board of supervisors today might be running for Congress in 5 years, might be running for Senate in 10 years, might be running for president after that. So each one of the candidates that you look at, each one of the people that you're looking at, you want to be thinking, which one is more likely to support life? When we try to decide how to vote, think of how God created. And then that helps us so much decide how to vote. God created life first. Then he created the family. Well, he created marriage then next. Then he created the family from that marriage. Then he created church, and then he created government also. He created all those. All those are God's institutions. So how do we help in that way that God had promoted life? How do we help that? How do we come alongside God as opposed to oppose God? With the family, in marriage, you have to have a solid marriage to have a solid family. So which one of the candidates of all those people on your ballot, remember, not just the president, but all those people on your ballot, which one of them are more likely than the other to support the institution of marriage and oppose the things that have been destroying marriage? And then the family. Now, one of the big problems we've been having with the family is you have President Biden had nominated somebody to the Supreme Court who now is sitting on the Supreme Court who could not even define what a woman is. I mean, I'm sure your listeners have let that sink in. There's only 9 people on the Supreme Court, and those 9 people are supposed to be the best, the epitome of what America has, and highly intelligent, able to discern, etc. And that woman could not even define or chose not to define what a woman was. Now, she said she couldn't. She said, I'm not a biologist. I'm not a scientist. Well, she chose not to do it, but she said she couldn't. Well, we would want to oppose any candidate who would go along with that. And remember, there was not a hue and a cry from Mr. Biden's party about, well, we need to ask this woman to step down from the nomination because obviously this is ridiculous. I mean, that's what should have happened. Presidents have withdrawn and encouraged their nominees to step aside when the interviewing process showed that they really weren't fit for the office, but they didn't. So we want to be looking at which one of the candidates will support that basic thing that God had created of he made us male and female. And that's the family. And so we want to be supporting the candidates that will support that institution of God and the creation. Because, I mean, let's think about it in real practical terms. If God said that he's creating the male and female, and if we then say or accommodate that somebody can have any one of 32 flavors of sexuality that they want, then that means they are calling God a liar, and we're saying, yes, that's fine. We can't do that. Not in say that we're a good biblical Christian. It's just, we can't do that. And even if we want to accommodate it, if we do, we will do it to our own harm. To whatever area that we're degrading life, we will be degraded. To whatever area that would degree that we're degrading marriage, we will be degraded. To whatever degree we are degrading the family, we will be degraded. And by we, I mean we individually, because we're walking through this culture and this life together. And we as a government, as a nation, we're going to be degraded. And then government. Government has to, as I've mentioned many times before, it has to be the rule of law under God. So which one of the candidates that you see on your ballot are going to be supporting God's view of life are more likely to support? Because we don't have perfect people. And, with our presidential candidates, we've got a pretty clear difference between the two of them. Neither of them are perfect on any of these issues. But there is a clear difference between the two. With all of your down ballot folks, it might not be quite as clear for all of them. And for those like school board and board of supervisors, they may not even had to state a position on some of these. So you're going to try to look at their back trail, look at how they are in life, and infer from there. But which are more likely to support God's view of life? Which of them are more likely to support God's view of the marriage? Which of them are more likely to support God's view of the family? And which of them are more likely to recognize that government is just there to do the rule of law under God? I mean, that's how you vote.
Well, those are some really good, rock-solid guidelines for guiding our thinking about how to vote.
Yeah, it's pretty simple.
Those are some good general guidelines. But then how does one go about determining whether this candidate or that candidate fits within those guidelines? Well,
if your church hasn't already given out voter guides, you can find lots of them online. Go to Family Research Council. Family Research Council, I believe, has a voter guide for every single race in the nation. So it'll have on those biblical viewpoints. I believe Moms for America has the same, and Moms for Liberty. Look at those voter guides, and they'll tell you. You can also call up the candidate. There might be some small races, your school board races, your board of supervisors races, things like that. Congressional races in areas that really haven't been controversial. You can call up their campaign and say, I'd like to see your position points on these items. Now, you might get some really generic ones that say general statements like, we think families are really important. Mm-hmm. Okay, but what are you doing to help them? What are you doing to make sure we have less illegitimacy in the urban areas and supporting more of those who are trying to be married and staying married? What are you doing to support that? What are you doing to accommodate things like that? We want to be looking also at rule of law under God is borders are important. How do I know that? Because the Bible tells me so. One of the big things in the Old Testament was do not move a border. Do not move that boundary marker. And why do we all think Nehemiah was so great? Because he helped build the wall around the city and protect it from what? From the people coming in. I mean, that's pretty straight up. And that's you can look in the New Testament for the borders and boundaries being important tools too. We want to also recognize the Scripture is very clear on we are to treat the stranger in our midst, the foreigner in our midst, as though they are not a stranger. We are to care for them, love them, treat them well. All right, individually, that's what we do. Collectively, we need to protect our borders and support the rule of law under God. We want to continue making this the United States, so we want to be able to recognize that acclimating our immigrants to our culture is extremely important, not trying to help them set up their culture in our nation. No. Well, why is that? Well, because if their culture was all that great, they would have stayed where they were.
Right.
It is the entirety of the American experience that makes us a great nation. And we want to be promoting that, not saying, oh, well, gee, we're second best to all these other countries they came from and fled from because they wanted to come to our country, which is great. Then why are we wanting to let them change our nation? I mean, we just need to be able to begin thinking in common sense terms. And if what you see with a candidate doesn't fit common sense, think through it again, make sure that you're not misunderstanding what they're presenting. But in all likelihood, you're not misunderstanding that. I think there's a clear distinction between most candidates on how they view women. Do they think that a woman's basic construct of being a woman is valuable? Or do they want to denigrate what it means to be a woman? I mean, the basic functions in life of a woman is entirely different from you and me, Doug. Their brain is wired different, their body's built differently, and it's built differently intentionally by God. So do we have candidates who denigrate their value as a woman and just want to make them another worker? Just another cog in the wheel of our society? Do they want to neutralize them as a woman? Or do they want to lift them up as a woman and make them be able to live to their full capacity in everything, intellectually, emotionally, physically, biologically, be a woman? God made them male and female. We should want to be encouraging that. Does a candidate's policies keep men as boys, keep males as boys, regardless of their age? Or does it encourage them to be true men, leaders, protectors, providers? When I talk to people who are thinking of marrying, I say, well, are you marrying a boy or are you marrying a man? Well, no, he's 35. No, he's 55. Well, yeah, but are you marrying a boy or a man? Well, what do you mean? Well, we know a boy has become a man when he thinks more of others than himself. A boy becomes a man when he thinks of others more than himself. That's manly. And so we have a society that has often encouraged males to stay boys. Oh, just focus on yourself. Just do what you want. There's so many structures in our society, so many tools that we have that allow them to do that and escape being a man, escape actually thinking of others and needing to take care of others. So look at the candidates, look at the policies they promote. Be thinking of tomorrow. Be thinking of Wednesday after the election. Be thinking of next year. Be thinking of the next election. Be thinking of when either your children or your grandchildren are going to be able to vote. What will the policies be then that have been just created by the people you either voted for or didn't vote for this time? And by saying the people you voted for, good, get to the polls and vote for those who are going to support the rule of law under God, et cetera, that we just talked about. But then maybe there's a lot of those folks we've heard about that don't vote, the Christians that don't vote, that know what is right and wrong, but don't vote. Well, then they've just voted for the other person, and that other person's policies will in all likely prevail. The policies stay in place for a very long time. Let's think of Abraham Lincoln. He was an extremely humble man who, because he was poor and in an area where there was very little literature, he had read the Bible through over and over and over and over before he ever was in his teens. Supposedly he had read it 11 or so times before he was 9 years old. I don't know who was keeping count at that time, but I do know by reading his scriptures and by reading his speeches and his biographies that all of his talk was infused with biblical knowledge. And he says he read the Bible over many times. It wasn't until he was in the White House that he actually professed Christianity as his faith, and that he recognized that Jesus was his Lord. Before then, I think it was that he was overly humble. One of those people who said, well, I'm just not good enough for God, or something along those lines. I mean, I've read a lot of different things about his spirituality. But the point I'm trying to get to, I'm taking a long time doing it, Abraham Lincoln was humble, and he was infused with the rule of law under God. And he knew graciousness and kindness were the dominant things, even though he was stuck with a nation at war. The policies that he promoted, the policies that he decided upon were of the utmost importance, freed about a half of our nation's population. Those policies lasted way beyond his personality, which the bulk of America at the time did not like. The South detested him, and many of the people in the North did not like him a bit. So that was the personality that the people at the time were seeing. And yet his policies, the nobility of his policies, went on up till today. You go to the Lincoln Memorial, you're going to read the Gettysburg Address and the words of his second inaugural, and you read those words and you see the man that promoted these ideas and these policies was what folks said after his death. He was a man of the ages. And that's what we want to be looking at, is what are the policies that are being promoted right now? How are they going to impact people 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, 100 years down the road?
Well, people may or may not be able to figure out what is going to happen over the next 100 years, but let's dial into your specialty as the legal counsel for Share Healthcare, Mike, as we come near the end of our time together today, and that is looking at this election. What is at stake when it comes to healthcare, health insurance, healthcare sharing, if anything, is at stake regarding this particular portion of the economy and our lives, which is actually a big portion, and that is how we pay for our healthcare?
Well, each degree of more socialist policy that is pushed onto healthcare has increased the total cost of healthcare for us as a nation. When I first began studying it back in the 1980s, it was about 12 to 13% of our economy. Then during the Obama era, when they were pushing Obamacare, it was said to be about 15 to 17% of our economy. And now it's supposedly right around 21% of our economy is of the cost of healthcare. And so that means that the government, by its dictates, is able to control 21% of the economy. So what the Democrat Party's platform is that they want to be having, and what Kamala Harris has proposed, she wants to have nationalized health care. Well, any one of the nations that has that recognizes the problems with that, but it reduces our freedom. We're having the impact now. Inflation is very much governmentally compelled, created. And so because of that, people's cost of healthcare is going up too, as well as their cost of everything else, which means when they want to be looking at some place in their budget they can fix. So Share Healthcare is a 501c3 Christian ministry. Its ministry is healthcare, helping other Christians share in their medical expenses. We do it $149 per month for a single, $249 for a couple, $349 for a family of four. And it gives people freedom, medical freedom, financial freedom, and religious freedom, because now as Christians, they're able to be part of a medical sharing program, a method to pay for their medical expenses that does not mandate to them that they have to pay for abortions, they have to pay for abortifacients, they have to pay for transgendering. And what do I mean by that? Well, those are each things that both Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are saying that they would want to mandate for all people in all states in all insurance. The Biden administration had just proposed that in a rulemaking tool that just came out just a little while ago, which would probably come to its completion about the time of the inauguration. So whoever is in power at that time would have the ability to say, yes, I want it, or no, we're getting rid of that rule. So then legislatively, that's so important. And with Share Healthcare, since it's not insurance, and it is a healthcare sharing ministry as defined by the Affordable Care Act, that means it's exempt from all the Obamacare, and its members are exempt from all the Obamacare dictates. We are free. And we have to begin looking for each one of these tools we can in healthcare, in home ownership, in working. How can we be free and create a tool that's better than what the government has? So many people are lured into the the healthcare exchanges or think that they have to be an indentured servant to their occupation because that's what provides their health insurance. We want to give people freedom. I was just talking to a couple earlier this morning who said that one of their daughters was having to stay at work because of the benefits that it provided for the family. And what benefits? Well, the health insurance. Oh, you mean she's not able to go home and raise her family the way they want to? You know, it's not somebody else saying, oh, you got to stay home. She wanted to be an at-home mom, but she couldn't because she felt that she was having to be an indentured servant to her job because of the health insurance it provided. And that's nonsense. You know, share healthcare provides that freedom for people to make their own choices. Do I want to stay at this job for its sake? Or do I feel like I'm compelled? Well, I don't have to be compelled. I can choose to do this share healthcare, which is very affordable. So when we begin voting in that way, voting with our dollars, voting with our choices, those are the real shifts that occur in a culture that then later politicians reflect those shifts that we've created by our economic and our cultural choices.
Well, Mike, if people are interested in finding out more about Share Healthcare, what do they need to do?
Well, they can look at the website, sharehealthcare.com, sharehealthcare.com, or they can give a call to 1-844-SHARE-HC, 1-844-SHARE-HC.
All right, that's sharehealthcare.com and 1-844-SHARE-HC. That's Mike Sharman. He's been our special guest today. And for Wave 94, I'm Doug Apple.